Hail, O soul of my tribe, and welcome to the Modern Barbarian Podcast. I want to start today's show with a quote that will help you characterize what I'm talking about. We have two lives, and the second begins when we realize we only have one. That's said by Confucius. At some point in all of our lives, we will face a near death experience. This experience will enlighten us to the realization that we are mortal and we will die one day. The measure of a barbarian can be taken by how they react to this realization. I want to tell you a little story about my life, share something personal with you so that you can understand me a little better and where I come from. About 3 years ago, I was really starting to learn more about the outdoorsman aspect of my life. The hunting, the camping, foraging, learning all of those different skills in case I needed them. About a year into this adventure, I come across some books on mushroom hunting, thinking that I will, learn this and be able to go find wild edible mushrooms and learn these cool things about them and just have that skill. Well, luckily I learned some of the first safety rules of try small bits, look how you react to it, double check everything before you eat anything, all this stuff. But even with a book as a guide and trying to follow all the rules, I still managed to poison myself. I got a hold of something called a fool's funnel. It's a type of mushroom that looks very similar to an edible mushroom called a trooper's funnel, I think is the edible one. I have since kind of put some distance between me and mushrooms, focused on some other aspects. But so anyway, I managed to get myself poisoned, and I was messed up for days off just a very little bit of this stuff. It's got a toxin in it called muscarine that will really jack you up. Messes with your stomach, makes your heart race, makes your eyes run, your body sweat, all this stuff. And I wasn't 100% sure what it was at first, and then realized that I'd poisoned myself because it kind of correlated. And I wound up like pretty messed up. Uh, and in that process of dealing with that and dealing with the realization of my own mortality and all the things that go with putting yourself in a situation where you could very nearly die, I developed a little bit of anxiety problem. Uh, I was afraid of poisoning myself all the time. And it's taken me years to come back towards a sense of normal for my life from that. Lots of self exploration and learning and figuring out how to properly process emotions and thought capture and a whole bunch of stuff. And we'll talk through some of it that I want to share with you. But the key takeaway here is that at every point in our life, or at every point in somebody's life, there's going to be that realization of mortality. Some will get hit harder with it than others. Some will handle it better on the front side than others. But we all have to go through it. All the way back to some of the greats and some of the ancient, philosophers, they've all talked about this. Nietzsche talked about it. Confucius talked about it. Every man, every barbarian will at some point have to face death. And they will have to have the strength to overcome death. So how do we do that? How do we learn to handle this realization of mortality if it hits us hard enough to start affecting our life? How do we live on and continue doing what we need to do in the face of death? There's a few things I've learned to help conquer these feelings of anxiety, to be able to still live your life even though you've had that glimpse of the other side. And for me, these are my terms, right? These are not professional psychological terms. They may correlate with some professional psychological theories But I'm going to talk about today in my words and how I've learned and how I've dealt with this in common words so that it's not some crazy, psychologist speak that nobody understands. I'm going to put it my way. For me, there are two halves of the mind that pertain to this conversation. You've got yourself, your consciousness, your thought, what you think of as you in your brain. And then you've got what I call the inner critic, the other side of your brain, the part you can't control so well, the part that thinks about things you don't want to think about, or won't let go of the song that's stuck in your head, or that tells you that you don't look as good as you think you do, or that you're not strong enough. That part that's always criticizing you from your own brain that you can't ever shut up. All the negative thoughts, fears, and emotions, they come from this inner critic. After a near death experience, often the inner critic goes into overdrive. This is a natural defense mechanism that humans have developed over thousands of years. It's tied directly to our fight or flight system. And after a major event, the inner critic can switch that system on when it shouldn't be turned on. Things that shouldn't be an issue will put you into fight or flight mode. Things that before it happened to you wouldn't have made sense to you to allow yourself to get that worked up about will hit you like a ton of bricks, and you won't have any choice. These feelings will come at you. You will go into fight or flight mode whether you want to or not. So in order to get back to normal life, we have to learn to overpower this inner critic. And by overpower, I don't mean make it go away, right? These are important parts of human evolution. Our fight or flight system, our awareness, our subconscious awareness are all very important pieces of what kept human beings alive for millennia and what are keeping us alive today. We as barbarians and warriors, we need this inner critic. We need it there. We need that awareness that brings to us. That subconscious awareness where it's paying attention to things even when we don't realize that it's paying attention to things and can set off those warning bells for us. But we need to learn to live with it, learn to control it, not let it go off when it shouldn't be going off, not let it turn into irrational fears and phobias. We just got to learn to live with the newfound awareness that comes from the realization of our own mortality. So we need to start to challenge the inner critic. We need to start exercising them as a skill, right? Use and train the inner critic the way you train yourself. There's also going to be the good side and the bad side of that inner critic. The side we want and the side we don't want. And for me, I've found that giving a name to the negative side of the inner critic has been a powerful tool for my mind. It takes something that feels foreign, unnatural, and powerful and allows it to become known, to know its name. You give it substance. You give it a something instead of an unknown. You can name it, and you can face it, and you can work with it or conquer it, whichever the case may be to be necessary. For me, I call this side of my inner critic the void. And I get that from French philosophy, the call of the void, right? Every person, at least according to the French philosopher, and I know it happens with me sometimes, has this call to darkness, to the void, where they think about what would happen if they ran their car off the road, or if they did some other unthinkable act. Sometimes it's real, the really dark stuff comes from that void, And you see it even in some of the worst people in society. They listen to that call of the void, and that's where these, horrible acts come from. The void gets so strong in their mind that they wind up listening to it, and they do these horrible things. And we all have a little bit of that inside us. We all have the ability to be the bad guy. We have to make the decision to be the good guy. It was Jordan Peterson that said, and I'm not quoting this verbatim, it's from memory, so don't count this as a quote, just give him credit. That to be weak and powerless is not a, a goal to obtain. It doesn't give you any sort of principle, right? It's those that have power, that have the monster inside of them, and only use it the way it's supposed to be used. To be able to be the monster and be the father, the husband that we're supposed to be. That's where true power comes from. And you'll have to take that from, go get his quote if you want to hear how he actually said it. But that's the gist of it in barbarian terms, that it is noble to have power and use it appropriately, but it is not noble to be powerless. So it doesn't matter what name you pick for yours, right? Just pick something that resonates with you. Like I said, I chose the void from ancient mythological concepts and French philosophy and all this meaning of nothingness and evil from nowhere. When something is truly destroyed, it is said to have gone to the void, where nothing remains. And that was really powerful for me. That the good part, a part of me that I liked, was gone. It didn't exist anymore. And I had to rebuild that. And part of that was the realization of this void's existence in my life. Now, once you name it, you refer to it only as that name. Understand that this is a part of your own self. You can never defeat it. And you must learn instead to make peace with it and overcome it. That means that it cannot control us, but we can never truly make it go away. Once it's there, it's there. And it's always been there. You just haven't given it a name and realized that it was there. It's not been powerful enough to be in the forefront, but it's always been a part of you. And then we must understand the tools and tricks of our inner critic. Some of these are universal, and some will be personal only to you. Your inner critic always has ways to get to you, to get at you, to get into your mind, to trip you up and trick you, to cause your fear and your panic. And you'll have to learn these tricks, learn its tactics, learn its methods, like any other enemy that we face, and learn to counteract them, overcome them, learn how to process them and deal with them. Some of these universal tricks. One is the stress hormone cortisol. Cortisol is your body's alarm system, right? It's one of the first parts of the fight or flight system. So your inner critic, whether it needs to or not, it senses a threat and it sets off this hormone in your body that's going to cause some very particular things to happen to you. You'll have, tunnel vision and auditory exclusion. A lot of the things we talked about in getting ready for a fight and the fight or flight response, this is the same kind of response. But these are going to go off at a time when you don't need them, when you don't want them. So you'd be sitting in your car on the way to work, or sitting in your recliner at the house, or at your gym getting ready to do your next set, and all of a sudden your ears start to ring and the world goes quiet. Your field of vision narrows, your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, and you start to feel this tightness and tenseness. This is part of that reaction to cortisol. And typically when you're true fight or flight mode, you're not in a cognizant space to be thinking about these things. You're not, sitting there feeling the feelings. You're going and doing whatever it is you're trying to face, whether it's get away from something or get into the fight, or if it goes off on a roller coaster, or you're getting into a cage fight, whatever it is, your mind would be distracted normally, and so you wouldn't necessarily feel and process all the effects that this hormone has on your system. But when this inner critic gains this power and it starts setting this off when it shouldn't be going off, then you're calm and rational when this stuff is going on and it hits, and you have nothing to do but feel the side effects of these hormones. Feeling those side effects can lead you to believe that something's wrong, which can feed this positive feedback loop that makes the anxiety and the fear stronger. You don't understand what's happening to you. You don't know why you feel all these things. You think there's something wrong and that you're about to be in some kind of danger, which reinforces this inner critic's feeling and makes it stronger. So it goes off, you feel all this stuff. You think all this stuff is a negative. You don't understand where it's coming from. And that makes the inner critic stronger. So the next time it comes back at you, it comes back even stronger. In order to conquer this, in order to learn to live with it and train it, you have to understand what's happening to your body so that you can understand what you're feeling is a natural part of you, something that you're supposed to feel in certain situations, a normal part of your fight or flight response, and that you are in no danger. The next part is going to be the adrenaline. The adrenaline will also cause your heart rate to increase. It will make your lungs breathe more efficiently. So you'll be taking in a higher volume of oxygen, which can lead to some issues if you're not expending a higher volume of oxygen. That brings about some of these weird feelings too. It causes blood vessels to send more blood to the brain and muscles, increases your blood pressure, makes your brain more alert, and raises the sugar levels in your blood to give you more energy. Now imagine that going off when you didn't want it to go off. You're sitting there, everything's calm, and then all of a sudden you're all stressed out, your breathing's all messed up, your heart rate's all messed up, your blood pressure gets jacked up, you're feeling all, like you just got done with a heavy workout, you got the pump going, and your sugar levels are up, so you're just feeling wired and jacked like you drank a whole pot of caffeinated coffee, and it comes out of nowhere. If you didn't understand why that was happening, it could be something that would trigger more anxiety and more fear, and again, make this thing stronger. Make this inner critic, this void, give it more power. And you put these two in conjunction, they can cause some pretty serious side effects. We've already talked about some of them, but you put them together and you're going to see something like, tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, loss of fine motor skills. Your fingers won't work right. In the fight world, we call it fingers to flippers, right? Small tactile functions become difficult to do. Your fingers may tingle and not feel right. Again, all this can be things that cause you to worry. And also you'll get some cognitive dissonance. Your brain won't remember things as they actually happen. There'll be some time deception and time distortion. It'll feel like it's been an hour when it's only been 3 minutes, or sometimes it'll feel like it's been 3 minutes and it's been an hour and a half of you staring at the wall, right? But understand that these are normal and safe side effects of these hormones in your body. Whether you're listening to this to learn about how to control these for being in a fight, or if you have anxiety or had anxiety yourself in the past and you're working on that, whatever it is, these are the same effects. They're all going to hit the same way. So you need to understand what your body's going to feel when this happens and how to properly process it so that you can use it like you're supposed to, but not cause yourself fear and anxiety over it. So, we must develop our own set of tools and strategies to overcome the attacks of the inner critic. The first thing to know is that what you're feeling in your body when this happens to you is real. Your hands may tingle from increased blood flow. You may feel dizzy. All the other side effects we talked about. All these are effects of the hormones that your body dumps when your inner critic puts you into fight or flight mode. This is a natural response. It's supposed to happen. May not be supposed to happen right now, but this is something your body is supposed to be able to do. Understanding that these effects are caused by hormones and not some outside source means that you can know that you're not only are these things not hurting you, they're there to help you survive. It took thousands of years, thousands and thousands of years of human evolution for our bodies to develop these systems, for our bodies to be able to increase our strength, our heart rate, our energy, control where blood goes so we don't bleed out if we're hurt, all this stuff. These are things that make human beings so strong, so tough and resilient. These are things to be celebrated, things to understand, things to know about you, that your systems work and those make you harder to kill. But you also have to understand that it's not supposed to be happening right now. There's no reason for it to be going on right now. That's the problem. That you got too much of a hair trigger. Your body goes off for no apparent reason. So if your system is falsely engaged, you can regain control. There are tools that we can use to regain control and start training this inner critic to only go off when it's supposed to go off, when we need it to go off, when we're actually in need of our fight or flight system. One of those tools is called thought capture and thought analysis. They kind of go hand in hand. So a thought capture is, okay, I think this thing. For me, personally, we've been talking about mine. Like, oh, no, I fucked up and I've poisoned myself with whatever random thing my brain decided to think was the problem that day. I ate mushrooms from the grocery store, or I undercooked some chicken, or milk that was out of date, whatever it is, all right? And I have to grab that thought and look at it and think, well, one, is that true? Is what I just did actually dangerous? No. Milk's not out of date, it's not spoiled. The mushrooms they sell at the grocery store are not poison, right? These are things we know and we can prove to ourselves. So you capture that thought, you grab it, and you don't just react on it, and you analyze it, and you make sure that what your brain is thinking, what it's saying, is rational, that it's reasonable, right? The next tool that you can use are body control exercises. These body control exercises are used to counteract some of the effects of the hormones that are going through your body from the fight or flight response, and to give you back positive control, to take back control of what you're thinking and what you're doing. So for me, what I wanted to do is to start by trying to wiggle my toes in a manner where I can feel each toe touch the ground individually. So like start with the pinky toe and touch the ground. Start with the next toe and touch the ground, and work all the way up to your big toe, which is actually really difficult to do. It takes a lot of conscious thought to make your toes move that way. They're not as dexterous as your fingers. So it pulls your head out of that negative space if you can make yourself do it. It takes a lot of conscious thought. And then once you get there, you start to breathe in heavy, deep breaths and count for 10 breaths. When you get to breath number 5, you push your butt real hard into the chair and tense all the muscles in your body and keep breathing deep breaths for the last 5 counts. And on 10, let everything go. Stop wiggling the toes, stop doing the extra hard breaths, stop tensing all the muscles, and you'll feel this flood of tension release go through your body from releasing all those taut muscles. And it helps you force a relaxation response and helps kind of reset your brain out of that mode, right? So that's for when a thought capture doesn't work. A lot of times you can use a thought capture and prevent yourself from going off the deep end. If not, you can use these body control exercises to kind of rein it all back in. And whichever one of those you go through, the final thing that I've been taught to do is called an evaluation. There's a tool that you use, and for me, I kind of picture it as 3 buckets side by side. There's an emotional bucket on the left, there's a logical bucket on the right, and in the middle is a bucket of wisdom. Now, a lot of these negative energies, these negative feelings and emotions, they come from an emotional side, our emotional bucket. That's where this thing comes from. And it sets off this warning bell or whatever it is, and you start getting into this weird stuff. And then you have the other side, the far right side, the rational side. This side doesn't use any of the emotions. This is the side that would completely turn this system off if it could. But right down the middle is wisdom. So when you mix emotion with logic, you get wisdom. You get a system that works, that protects us, and you learn how to be better and smarter and a better version of yourself by controlling this. And you always want to evaluate what just happened and understand which part of it came from the emotional bucket, which part you needed from the logical bucket to counteract it. Or if you're too, like me, the emotion is the part that drives my side, It's what gets me revved up. And I have to use logic to counteract it, to get back to the middle, to start putting things in the wisdom bucket. But just for instance, say you're the other side. You've got something going on the logical side. Maybe you're thinking about, finances or whatever, and you've done a bunch of math on it, and you're like, there's no way I can make this bill or whatever the fuck it is that's got you all wrapped up, right? Maybe you need to reach into the emotion bucket and have a little faith and get back to the middle so that you can turn that into one thing and put it in your wisdom bucket. But the goal is to keep filling up that wisdom bucket. Take emotion, take logic, start combining them, start turning these into things that you can put in your wisdom bucket. And as that thing fills up, as it gets more and more full, the other buckets stop overflowing so much. You'll stop having to do this as often. You'll regain control of your life. So, those are some of the tools that I use. Now, even if this doesn't apply to you, you can still start taming your inner critic. You may not have any kind of anxiety issues or negative thoughts or whatever that some of us have gone through. You may not have hit your time in your life where you realize that you've only got one, and you may not be processing any of this yet. That doesn't mean you can't learn the tools and prepare. I wish somebody had told me about it before it had happened to me. I wish somebody had let me know that this was a thing and how to prepare and strengthen my mind against it before it happened to me, not after. So you can begin taming your inner critic too. And not everyone is going to develop an anxiety problem. But we all will feel anxiety in some point in our lives. It's a normal human emotion. You can't live without it. Anxiety is just part of life. But these tools can still help you manage that anxiety. It doesn't have to get so bad that you have a true, anxiety problem, panic attacks, and all that shit, for these tools to be useful for you. These can make your life a little bit easier every day if you have a moment of anxiousness. And learning to manage your anxiety makes you a stronger human being. You can use it when you need it, and then be able to turn it off when it's getting in the way. That makes you better, right? It gives you a little bit of control over this switch. Like, I was watching this documentary the other day about hysterical strength, right? This woman, I can't remember her name now, but you can look up several instances of it online that, there's been thousands of them, where some mom or some dad or somebody gets put in this extraordinary situation and their adrenaline goes off, and then they do some crazy feat of human strength, right? And when I was watching the other day, this car, big ass station wagon, had come off a jack stand or something and was laying on top of her kid, her son, who's, I'm guessing early or late teens, early 20s, he still lived at home but he was working on his own car kind of stuff. And she goes out there and she deadlifts this freaking car up off of him so he can get out. Talking like a 4,000 pound station wagon. This is the kind of stuff that they do in World's Strongest Man competitions. To pick up a whole side of a car, a heavy car at that, to get somebody out from underneath it. And I mean, they're not putting the people underneath them, but we're talking like 900,000 pound deadlift this old woman never worked out in her friggin' life pulled off because of hysterical strength, right? But you never heard of hysterical strength? We'll take a little sidebar here. It's this idea that human beings are actually a whole lot stronger than we ever use in our regular lives. Our muscles are actually capable of a much, much more strength output than we need in our regular lives. But there's a very high chance of personal injury when you use the muscles to that amount. So our brains have developed this protection circuit inside of them that limits the amount of strength in your muscles that you can use to prevent you from damaging the system, right? Tearing the tendons off, blowing the muscles out, all this stuff. But hysterical strength, it's believed to be part of the fight or flight system in extreme cases where, a whole lot of hormones go off and it turns that whole protection circuit off. And that's where you see these women that do these crazy, mama bear feats and pick up whole cars. Or you see dudes that are in some kind of crazy scenario and they run through a hail of gunfire and get shot 37 times and still manage to survive and save everybody, kind of stuff. These are this hysterical strength kicking in. But imagine if you could tap into just a piece of that. If you could learn to control this inner critic, this fight or flight response, and when you needed it, you could turn it on. You could, you're not going to get the full effect turning it on yourself, right? But if you could learn to trigger a little bit of cortisol and a little bit of adrenaline all on your own in high stress scenarios where it wasn't going on itself, think about what a cool tool that would be. Not saying that that's possible or that I've done that or anything, but if we ever learn to control this well enough to turn that on ourselves, man, that'd be an amazing tool. But the more important side is being able to live your life. Being able to turn this system off when it doesn't need to be on. Especially if it's turning on its own when you don't want it to. So use this to your advantage. Use what we're talking about and what we're learning today to your advantage. Because anxiety in healthy levels is a highly evolved survival skill to help keep you alive. You don't want to ever lose that. You want to learn to listen to it and use it to make you better, a better version of yourself. You can use it to help you raise your awareness of critical things in your daily life. You can use it to help stop taking unnecessary risk while still being fully capable of taking the risks that are necessary. And just some examples of what I mean by unnecessary and necessary risk, right? Driving like a complete jackass on the interstate, doing 200 miles an hour, and putting your life and everybody else's life around you in danger is an unnecessary risk. But for some of us, going to the racetrack to develop our driving skills is a necessary risk. We go to a place where it's controlled, where we can learn to do it properly. So if we are ever in a situation where we do need to use it out on the road, we've trained ourselves on how to do it. That's the difference, right? And you can listen to this inner critic and be like, no, that's an unnecessary risk. Let's go get some official training from a professional and learn how to do this right. Is that still dangerous? Absolutely. There's still risk involved. But that's necessary risk. You need that skill. It's not for no reason and with no training and no understanding flying down the interstate like a dumbass, putting everybody in danger. That's unnecessary. You can also learn to listen to your tuition. Your subconscious picks up on things that your conscious mind does not. Sometimes those can be, for people with an anxiety issue, those can be a trigger, right? You'll be sitting around and your subconscious picks up on something in the background that you didn't even realize, and it can switch it on. And you don't know what's going on. But if you stop and you realize that something set that off, and you get up and you look around and you figure out what that trigger was. What did my subconscious see that I missed? What am I missing here? What can I learn from this? Then you can start to train your awareness. You can start to become more and more aware of your surroundings. Start to understand your own mental state better and get stronger. And I think that's another powerful tool that you can gain if this happens to you. You can come out the other side, right? You can realize that this is making you stronger. Adversity is here to make you stronger. If we never had to go through adversity, we would never gain strength. Right? We go to the gym to put our muscles in adverse conditions to make them adapt and get stronger. We have to do the same things with our minds if we want our mental toughness to get stronger. We've talked about this in prior episodes. We had one all about that, courage and mental toughness. But sometimes you get put into a situation where it's not training anymore. Something's happening to you for real. A real condition has come about. And you have to learn to still be what you need to be. This anxiety condition that I contracted from the story that I told you, where I messed up pretty bad and I poisoned myself and wound up with some serious, side effects from it. I had to learn to still be the person that I needed to be. I still have to be a good father, a good husband, the barbarian protector, the leader of my tribe. I'm still responsible for all that. And this was a hindrance to that. This was keeping me from doing that job the way I was supposed to until I learned to conquer it. And you use whatever tools are available to you to do that. Therapy is a thing. Some people, you may need it, right? I worked with one a couple times, and that's where I learned a lot of these tools that made me better and stronger. Needing training and needing taught how to do things is not a weakness. And a lot of people look at that as, oh man, you go see a therapist, look at that. But no, it's training you to understand your own mind and to fight this void, this little demon inside of you that's messing with your mind, to regain your strength, to gain wisdom, and come out the other side a stronger, better, wiser human being. And you don't have to have that severe of a case to get better, right? You can just start preparing yourself now to deal with it. So let's start wrapping up a few conclusions here. We've covered most of what I wanted to talk about. Actually, all of what I wanted to talk about. I gave you guys a little bit of personal insight of the life of the modern barbarian. What's happened in my life. What's helped me become the person that I am. How I've had to overcome this adversity to be a better, stronger person for my tribe. So just a few quick conclusions. At some point in your life, you will have to come face to face with your own mortality. There is no escaping this. Even if you do nothing dangerous. It was an ancient Viking belief that the coward dies 1,000 deaths, where the warrior has to die only one. And what do they mean by that? Well, they mean that this guy never does anything because he's scared of everything. Then he has to deal with the consequences of if that had killed him anyway, because he's not doing what he wants to do. He's not living life. He dies a little every day. Whereas the warrior, the barbarian that goes out there and lives life to the fullest, only has to die when it's his turn to perish on the battlefield. We should all be so lucky. It's how you deal with these encounters that make you a barbarian. Barbarians do not fear death. We all owe a death. Every person listening to this podcast will die at some point. None of us are immortal. We will all die. Our days on this earth are finite. You have to live every single day as though it could be your last. Make sure you're making yourself stronger. Prepare for tomorrow. But don't ever let anything stop you from living your best life every day. And as barbarians, we do not fear death. Since we all owe a death, what a barbarian must fear is a shameful death. Living the life of a coward. Dying, coward in fear, hiding from everything scary, trying to live this sheltered, safety-cultured life. Being afraid of everything. You have to have the courage to still live life, even though death is real. And that's where real courage comes in. Knowing that death is out there, always looking for you, always just around the corner, one slip away, and still being strong enough to overcome death. That's all I've got for today, guys. I want to thank you for listening to this. I hope you're enjoying it. Please take a look at our social media pages. I finally got some to work for this podcast. So if you are on Facebook, there's a page, The Modern Barbarian Podcast. We'll put some posts up about what's going on there. My goal with this social media is to start to help all of you build a tribe. Right? If we get all of our listeners to get onto this social media, there's a high likelihood that the people listening to this podcast think like the other people listening to this podcast. They think like you. And if you've lived a life like I have and you realize how difficult it is to find like-minded people that think like we think, people that want to do the things that we want to do, that want to be strong, that want to eat right, that want to train in violence, they want to build a tribe, protect that tribe, and live a life of a tribal life worth living. Building a core group and doing everything for that core group, sacrifice everything for the tribe to have a life that's worth living. Well, finding those people is hard. Finding those people is really damn hard. So I'm going to try and put some social media stuff together so that you guys can get on there and find each other. So that you guys can start to learn that other people are out there, that you're not an island. You're not alone in the middle of the ocean. There are other people out there, and start to build your tribe. So on Facebook, you've got the Modern Barbarian Podcast. On Twitter, it's at MOD_Barbarian. There is a Modern Barbarian Podcast on Reddit. And there's also, what's that one with the pictures? I'm not a social media guy. I've been away from it intentionally for years. But I thought that getting back into it was important because I need to build these places for my tribe to get together, for you guys to learn. So Instagram, the other one. We got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Reddit. And let's see what we are on the old Instagram here. Pull it up. On Instagram, it is the Modern Barbarian Podcast. So there's all the social medias. Facebook page, Modern Barbarian Podcast. Instagram, the Modern Barbarian Podcast. Twitter, at MOD_Barbarian. And on Reddit, the page, the Modern Barbarian Podcast. Go check them out. Let's start building a little bit of a tribe over there and help you guys find other tribe members that are worth having around. Please like this thing if you can. Oh, that reminds me. There's also a Modern Barbarian YouTube page now. So I've got start from the beginning with all the old episodes. We're going to put one a week out. Every week forever. It's going to be a little bit behind the live podcast. But if you like YouTube, they're all going to be on YouTube. That makes it easy to share, easy to get people to show them and bring them in. You can just drop a YouTube link for them instead of trying to convince them to listen to a podcast. You can be like, hey, go watch this YouTube. Or you can cut bits out of it for sound bites and, share little snippets of it with them or whatever. So get out there, help spread the word. Let's start finding all of our modern barbarians and start getting them into these places and into the tribe. And that's it for today, guys. Signing off.